everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails, the weekly podcast that helps you grow your business, improve your life, and enjoy yourself along the way. I'm your host, Allan Langer, and every week we try to bring you the best thought leaders, the best business leaders, and the best minds out there to help you succeed in business and in life. So sit back, relax, grab your pad, your pen, and your favorite beverage, and enjoy the next episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. This is your host, Allan Langer, and I am probably the most excited I've been since doing this podcast, and I've had one great guest after another. But today, I have one of my personal favorites. Her name is Jill Konrath. I'm pretty sure most of you out there have heard of Jill. She is the best-selling author of 4 sales books on the New York Times bestseller list. Jill is going to join us today to talk about the frazzled world of selling and how we get in front of customers and things like that. But before we get to Jill, I just want to mention, remember the question of the week. If you have a question, send it. Get on the marketingandsalespodcast.com. That is the website, as you all know, marketingandsalespodcast.com. Send me your question. And if your question is chosen for the podcast at the end of the podcast, you receive a free autographed signed copy of my book if we use your question. So we've got a good question coming up later on today, but that is, go to the contact section for that. And without further any delay, we're going to have Jill Konrath. Jill, thank you for joining the podcast, Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You're very welcome. So I will have to say that we are recording this in the morning, so it's Marketing and Sales Over iced coffee this morning, as we both have. But thank you so much. I am a huge, huge fan of yours. I read your book. I have it. It's still on my shelf. It's right here, Snap Selling. I think that was your second book, right?
Second book, yes.
Yeah. It made a big impact in my selling life, 8, 9, 10 years ago, whenever I read it. And I still have it on my shelf. It's dog-eared. I go back to it. So, like I said, Jill has the first book you wrote, I think, was Selling to Big Companies. Then you wrote Snap Selling. And then you came out with Agile Selling and More Sales, Less Time. Your
Correct.
theme has always been to how to sell, how to get in front of the frazzled customer, number one, how to get in front of that frazzled prospect. But I'd like to talk about that before we get started getting into it. A lot of questions I get are about, I can't get in front of the customer. I cold call, I cold email. What do I need to do? So this is what got me started as being your fan. So why don't you tell our audience some tips on that?
Some tips. I think the first thing I'd really say is you have to sit in your customer's shoes for a while, and you really truly have to understand who is this person that you're trying to reach. I mean, what is their role? If they're in a company, if they're in a consumer role, what is their role? What are they trying to achieve? What are they hoping for? What are their goals? What are the issues and challenges that they're running into? You really have to get inside that person's head. And I don't think nearly enough people do that. And I come from B2B sales, and I have to say that in B2B sales, you not just only have a human being. You may have a human being who's a CFO, or you may have a human being who's a vice president of marketing, or you may have a human being that's in HR. And all those human beings have different expectations placed on them and different goals. And so until we can learn to talk their language and speak about what matters to them, nothing else matters. Selling isn't just selling. Selling is really being able to help somebody else achieve what they want.
Right.
And get, to close the gap. I mean, here they are today. Here's where they want to be. How can we help them get there? And sometimes they don't know what this looks like, where they really want to be. All they know is here I am. And they may be swirling, with here they are. They may have all these stop gaps, that they're doing to fix up what they're doing. But until we can think like them, we can't find words to connect with them that will resonate. And so I think that's the very, very first thing that people need to do is really analyze who are they talking to? What matters? What do they care about?
I just had a recent, I actually, you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. We get all of these unsolicited sales DMs all the time. Yeah. And I like when I have an extra minute, I like to play with them and see actually what they're going to say to me if I respond. And I entertain this one guy who sent me a DM. And as soon as I said, well, tell me how, he said, I can help you improve my business, not knowing whether I wanted to improve my business or not. Maybe my business is doing fine. Yeah. So I said to him, how can you help me? That's how I responded. And right away I got his calendar link. That was it.
Yep.
So I want to take this. I want to see what this guy has to say. And literally I scheduled an appointment, and the first, I'm not kidding, 7-8 minutes, just talking at me, talking about himself, talking about the company. And I finally said, can I stop? Yeah. I said, can I stop you? I said,
work with them. I mean, why would you
do you even know what I do?
Yeah.
Crazy.
You know, the ones that get me, when you're talking about the ones that come in via LinkedIn or people that reach out and want to connect with me, a lot of them are in the social media arena, and they want to connect and help me because I'm an author, and they want to help me improve my social media presence. and I think to myself, now that's really funny because I have, 380,000 followers on LinkedIn, and that's kind of a few more than most people have. Yeah, but they don't even bother to check. They're just doing their, let me go after the numbers. The numbers are so important. I have to make my numbers. I have to get out in front of all these people, but numbers are worthless if quality sucks.
Yes, absolutely. I always said sales is a human game, not a numbers game. So
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So one of the P in SNAP has to do with, or if I remember correctly, I think I will, priorities, right? Finding the priority for the client. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, what's most important to them? If you're asking them, what are they? For example, again, I work in B2B. What is their main priority this coming year? Everybody has something that they're trying to achieve, and again, it's trying to find out of all the things that they have on their plate and what they're trying to do, what happens to be the most important 2 or 3. Because if you can focus on their most important 2 or 3 areas of concern or desire, then you are aligning with them, and you're talking about what matters. And again, it's really all about what matters.
Right. And not just being another salesperson.
Oh, there's so many other salespeople out there who are just yapping away and talking about their product and service, and I mean, they just make me want to throw up. I mean, they're so bad. They're so bad. And you would think that people would realize that it's not working because it's not working. Yeah. But instead, they just go after more, and they push that more button, and I got to make more calls, more emails. And so they send out more, and they waste all their time doing more, burning all these bridges behind them rather than stopping and saying, this isn't working too well. Maybe if I could shift a few things around, if I could change it from, it might change for example, the subject line of your email, or when you call somebody on the phone, to change the first sentence that you say to them if they answer the phone. I mean, there's so many things you can play with if you start looking at this. Is what we're saying is an act of we're creating a conversation. Right. We are the creators of it, and we have the ability to create a conversation that works and is effective, and that finds out if it's important to the client or potential client or not, or to create one that is going to get us deleted in a nanosecond.
Right. Exactly. And, I've always thought, and I was part of a huge organization when I was selling, and I was more B2C, but it was still a huge organization. And it was all about numbers. It's just, the more appointments you run, you'll sell, you'll sell your share. And it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm.
No, it's appalling to me that people in sales think that the more button is the button to push, when so few people are looking at the better button. And the better button is the one that is done by those who are successful in their jobs, and they make fewer calls, but they're better calls. They have fewer prospects, but they are better prospects. Mm-hmm. And fewer demonstrations, but they are better demonstrations. And to me, it's almost like if you can take a look at who is the salesperson who's doing well with the fewest amount of activities and say, what the world is that person doing? Mm-hmm. As opposed to going, you need to do more. And I've been in that position too, where companies told me more demos, more everything. And it's like, but I'm 175% of quota.
Well, didn't that happen to you when you were a copy salesman?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what was happening, right? That was how you started your career, right?
Right. I was selling copiers, Xerox, and it wasn't, I was out cold calling on the streets and I had to give more demos and my territory was like on the other side of the world from the office and nobody wanted to go in. So I figured out how to sell without them. Wow, isn't that amazing?
But you weren't hitting your quota numbers on the calls you made, right?
No, my quota. And my manager finally said to me, Jill, will you please lie about how many calls that you're making? Because I am rating on the roll-up of everybody's demonstrations and proposals and cold calls. And it's
crazy.
Like, it makes no sense. Here I am at the top of the leaderboard, and you're telling me to do more as opposed to saying, Jill, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing that's allowing you to get by with fewer prospects? And to me, it was if you think about fewer and better, that's the best way to spend your time with people who are well qualified, who are interested in what you're doing and are having good conversations with you. But it also means you have to figure out how to do it. That there are people out there who are selling in tough times. They're doing something differently, and so the question is, what are they doing differently? Don't just do the more button.
I have a quick story that exactly what you said. So I was early in my career, I was part of this organization, and I hate the term closing percentage, but for today's conversation, I was closing at the high, almost 70% of the people I met.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. And the company, their training, I always thought that their training was they want to get a 30% closing team. If we're 30%, we're successful. That's kind of the mindset of the world out there.
Yeah.
So there were these 2 reps that they hired, and I looked at the numbers one month, and they were both closing under 20%. So I went to my boss, and I said to him, listen, why don't you have me ride with these guys? I'll see if I can help them out. They're under 20%. They're really struggling. And you know what he said to me? He said, no, I don't want you to ride with them. You're going to mess them up.
We don't want them closing at that astronomical.
We don't want them. No. We don't want you to train away from our sales process. Because he's like, I know what you do. You don't follow the process. You're a field salesman. You just do what you do, but don't mess up anyone else. And I thought that was, never forgot that day.
Yeah. Well,
and I never went with them.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I remember once talking to a rep from an insurance company, and he was so proud of himself. The insurance industry is like 80%, 90% turnover. It's like this horrible turnover rate. And this guy said, I pound out 300 calls a day. That's why I make it. And I'm going, that is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. First of all, that a company would allow such incredible turnover. And the high cost of turnover to me is like, you have to recruit, train, onboard, get them up to speed. There's the learning curve and why a company would even allow that. Yeah. But here's this guy who really thinks that he is doing the right thing because he's pounding them out. It's like, crazy. Fewer is better.
Yeah, more is better. Boy, it really is amazing. So tell me, over the years, you've been doing this forever, and you're in a position because you're brilliant at what you do. What have you seen, from the days of Xerox to now? Obviously, sales has changed quite a bit. Now we're in the land of Zoom. Tell me some of the things that you see that people need to be doing now, and what works now that didn't work before, or vice versa.
Let me just say, I think that people are more discriminating today than they were before. Because first of all, their inboxes are filled with how many gazillions unsolicited emails from people, and everybody's trying to get a hold of them, and they're trying to link up via LinkedIn. And so I think today's buyer is far more discriminating and puts more walls up around him or her, right, because there's so many people that are trying to get at that person. The second thing that I think is really out there that is positive is the fact that there's information on people. And, you can go to LinkedIn and you can find out, who is this human being? What do they say about themselves? What is their history? Do I have any connection? Do I have any common people with them? And you can learn so much about them that it enables you to craft a conversation with them that is, and I say craft because, again, sales is the act of creating something, the conversation, but you can craft it to be right on and targeted. And so anybody who doesn't do their homework today and doesn't go to people's websites and learn about all these things about the company and what they're doing and their their competition, anything that you might need to learn about. Anybody who doesn't do that thing comes off as a real loser. And buyers want nothing to do with them. I think there's some research out of Gartner that shows that like 83% of people say that salespeople aren't prepared for the meeting. And I'm talking about executives. 83% said they're not prepared for the meeting. And of that, very few of them get invited back for a second meeting. And, the goal of the meeting is to have a second meeting sometimes, not only one meeting. Or, I think in your business, you have one call closes, but what do you have to do to get to a one call close? You've really got to structure it and think, what does this person need and how am I going to get there? And what is the best way to develop the relationship with this person that they know that I clearly understand what it is that they want. I show them options and guide them because people need guidance. There's so much information out there.
Right.
They need somebody to guide them places and help them find the right decision for them.
And also today, the biggest thing I've seen is obviously since I started, there was no internet. When you started, there was no internet. Now we've got the internet. I mean, like I tell young reps, you have no idea what you have in front of you that we didn't have back in the day. I don't want to sound like my father, but it's like, it's like people have information now. They come to the fight, with this informational ammunition that's like, and they're getting it because they don't want the salesperson to rip them off. Like they don't want to make sure they want to tell me the right information. So, and it's because that perception is the salesperson I can't trust. And that's the perception out there from
because
day
they're
one.
just going for the close, right? The salesperson's just there to get the close because it's all about them closing the deal, not about the customer getting what they want.
Exactly. So, I mean, why do you think that, building your car online now is so popular? Because they can just walk into the dealership with their printout and say, this is what I want. Don't talk to me. Don't give me any sales pitches. This is the car I want. I just designed it. And that just becomes, the online stuff has been incredible. So this is really cool stuff. So the other question I wanted to ask you is, you kind of answered it, but getting your foot in the door is another question I get, like how to get in front of people, getting your foot in the door. Once you do that, do you recommend, what do you recommend at that point? Differentiating yourself, talking about your product more? Like you're saying, no, you don't want to do that, right? So
did you see my tongue stick out?
This is video. So the people who are listening, she just stuck her tongue out. How do you differentiate yourself when you're in front of someone?
I think it starts out, I think you actually have to plan your meeting. Again, we're talking about how to create a good meeting. What makes a good meeting? You have to connect with people up front. You have to, but not being necessarily buddy-buddy, but connecting around points of interest. And, like if you're going into their home, you would be talking about their home and saying something about their home and finding out what is this project that you're thinking about doing. And you would want to connect with them that way. But very soon you do need to get to the business of what you're there, and you need to figure out a way to get them into it that is graceful and gets them talking about their needs and issues and concerns.
Right, exactly.
Can I just give you an example of how one thing
Please.
that I changed, I write about in one of my books, and this was about a voicemail and how I got things to work. But anyway, I used to say something like when I call people or email them, I basically say, hi, I'm Jill Konrath. I'm president of Leapfrog Strategies. We're a sales training company that specializes in blah, blah, blah. And I'd tell what I specialized in. And I'd say, I'd love to find out how you're currently doing things and then share with you what we can do to help. Now, everybody has heard that a gazillion times, and people's finger is on the delete button. The minute you say, hi, I'm Jill Konrath I'm president of Leapfrog Strategies. We specialize in delete. I mean, just boom like that. Okay, so I switched it up after I thought about, this isn't working anymore. And suddenly I changed it to something like, hi, this is Jill Konrath calling. I understand your company is launching some new products in the upcoming months. I've got some ideas that can help you shorten time to revenue. If this is something you're interested in, let's talk. And I completely went away from here's what I do and went into what they were hoping to achieve. And, again, you come from from windows and doors and different things that I've never done. But again, you got to talk about what's interest to them, and they don't care about your new whatever. Because the minute you start talking about, we got some new exciting this, they say, well, how much does it cost?
Right. Right.
The minute they go in, they ask that question, if it's real early on, you created a barrier. They go, oh God, that's way too much. And then you're backpedaling as opposed to really focusing on what they're trying to achieve. Oh, let me look around. What are you trying to do here? Oh, tell me about it. What got you started? And you're trying to establish a relationship and conversation in the process of selling as opposed to, let me tell you about my stuff. Stuff is a problem.
Yeah, and it's a feature dump. And I've ridden with so many reps that start talking about features that the customer doesn't even need or want. They don't even find out. Like, I'm here for an entry door and you're talking about my windows. What are you doing?
Oh my God. I was just on a demonstration from somebody who was selling technology. Okay. And I was observing the demonstration, so I wasn't the exact point. It wasn't to me, but I was an observer. And it was fascinating to me because there were so many slides. I mean, it was a Zoom meeting with slides inserted in there. So many slides about the different customers and their goals and what they'd achieved and the technology and all the layers of this and that they built into it. And it was nothing that this client would have ever been interested in. Wow. In fact, it was the wrong market. It was all, the client was a B2B, business to business customer. And the examples, 95% of them were B2C. And this person kept having to backtrack to try to explain, well, it's not exactly about you, but they've achieved these results. And it's like, well, why are you putting these slides in? They're not relevant. They're mucking up your thing. And why are you telling me all the 7 layers that you put into your design of this intricate technology product? It was like, I was so overwhelmed. It was overkill. And it ruined everything. I see it.
And you were on this call just as an observer to help them with the sales pitch?
Well, I was actually on at the request of the person who was in the buying mode. Oh,
okay. Gotcha. So you were even looking at it from his perspective or her perspective.
Oh God, yes. I was sitting there. Why is he telling this guy?
Wow.
Why is he telling my client these things? It's irrelevant. And it's confusing the matter. Worse yet.
And here's what happens. And it's like people get so scarred from bad salespeople. Like they will live with bad products. I went on a ride along about 10 years ago with a rep. A young rep. He was actually pretty good. He had potential, but we were in front of this really nice couple. We were sitting in their backyard on their deck. It was a beautiful day. They needed windows. People know me that I sold windows for Anderson. And he started good, but then he went into his pitch. And he stopped listening to the customer. He went into the pitch, and I just sat there and I listened. I was going to let him sink or swim. And he went into the pitch, and they still knew they needed windows. So despite what he was doing, they were like, I really need to do this. Yeah. And he even screwed that up. So the guy finally said, okay, that's a little more than I thought. I might have to think about it. And he just went into canned objection handling 101.
Oh, worse.
Tell me why you need to think about it. All these, like you said, throw up stuff. Yeah. The guy finally got so mad at him, he stood up and he said, I'm done. Stop trying to sell me this on the first day. I'm leaving. And he walked into the house. The wife was completely embarrassed. She's sitting there. Her face is all red. So I finally said, we'll leave now. Let's go. I forget what his name was. So we left. Yeah. And here's the thing. I drove by that house 3 years later, and they still had their same windows.
No.
To me, they were so scarred by that experience. They didn't want to have anyone else over the house. And I thought that was sad, actually.
It is.
So salespeople, stop scarring your customers. You're ruining it for the good salespeople out there.
Yeah, right. Isn't that the truth? No, I just think salespeopeople need to realize that they're creating the experience, and in the success or failure of it, they have to look back at what they've created. And this is what I remember when I was first in sales, and I went to a leadership training program because I was a high potential salesperson. And they wanted to move into management fairly fast. But one of the things that they said is only 1 out of 7 salespeople stops and analyzes what they've done after they have a meeting. Only 1 in 7 stops and analyzes. And the 1 in 7 who does this is typically a high achiever. Mm-hmm. But, the bulk of people just go, they'll walk out of a bad call or a bad meeting, a bad Zoom, whatever it is. They'll knock out, oh, that guy's a real jerk.
Right. They blame the customer, right?
Yeah. Or they'll say, he's so stupid. He just doesn't get it, Or they'll say, it went really well and there's no next step scheduled, there's nothing coming up next, but, he said he'd get back to me, and let me know. And it's like, you guys, there are times in calls, if people don't get back to you, you have to stop and say, why haven't they?
Right.
If they said they would, or if you try to reach them afterwards and they refuse to take your calls, you have to say, what happened? Or if they constantly raise objections, rather than becoming an expert at objection handling techniques, which is what most companies teach their salespeople, how to handle them, the smart seller will look at how to eliminate objections, how to make sure they don't come up in the first place.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language.
Seriously, if somebody says to you, for example, we said the price is too high, somebody says to you early on in the call, the price is too high. And then you're kind of defeated and you're trying to argue. Well, a lot of people have felt that way in the past, a lot of people feel that way, and they go through some found objection handling technique and try to do it, or they do some stupid thing that they've been taught and it doesn't work. And the question that they should be asking is, what did I say right before I got that objection?
Mm-hmm.
And how could I have done it differently? Because clearly what I said led to this outcome.
Right.
And I don't think people realize that they create the outcomes that they get. People don't want to talk with you again. People put objections. What did you say? What's your responsibility? What can you change to make things different?
Yeah, I always say the objections don't come from the customer. The objection comes from the sales rep. They're the ones who give the objection to the customer because of what they said. That they didn't make them comfortable, whatever, all those different reasons. The objections are coming up from a lack of comfort. And that's a foundation of it. So, well, we are we're already past the half hour.
No.
But yes, we are. This is amazing. I could talk to you forever, but I'm gonna ask you one more question, then we're gonna get to the question of the week. And I kind of end this with all of my guests is, if you had to leave one nugget for today's sales professionals, one thing, and we went through a lot of nuggets today, but what would you say to someone? This is the one thing you should do. What would that be?
Know your customer. No, truly understand your customer. Everything is based on your customer.
Yep. There you go. There's Jill Konrath's big nugget, and it's true. If you start with that, you're going to be in a lot better shape than most of the other salespeople out there. Okay, the Ask Allan segment. The question that came in is actually, you kind of touched on it before, but it's a good question. It came from a lady named Joan, and she is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. How about that? My first Tennessee listener that I've seen. Joan asks, what is the best way to write an email or write a subject line for a potential client? So what would you say with that?
I've written ebooks and spoken on that extensively.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's a good question for you.
It's a big question. And it encompasses so many things. First of all, I think everybody needs to realize that an email has many factors in it. And you can't just change one thing. But there's a subject line, there's the first sentence that might show up on your cell phone. You have to realize that 80 some or more % of the emails are read first on a cell phone, and they have to look good on a cell phone. So we have a visual appearance. We can't have paragraphs that are too long. And by the way, most people write their emails on a computer to send them out, and so you get really long emails. The sheer length of it matters, the length of each paragraph matters, and the content matters. So there are so many different factors involved. Other than that, the first line is the subject line is your most important, and it has to be relevant. But when you think about that, you have to say, well, what is relevant to these people? And you don't want to sound like a marketer. And a marketer has a subject line that every word starts with a capital letter, like it's a headline. Mm-hmm. And that immediately looks like you're a salesperson. So you can't do that. You have to just have the first letter cap, like your system does it. And you have to then say something interesting. that would make them, that would pique their curiosity, that is relevant to what they're doing. For example, maybe if you're in the, and I don't know your industry, but perhaps if you're following building permits and you see who's put some building permits up, you might, have something about the building permit and related to what you do, but you would follow it. You would talk about what matters, or you would maybe go to a neighborhood that has older homes and know that many of the older homes need new windows because the neighborhood was built in 1986 and or let me just say, I just replaced my doors the other day. Okay. Last week, I replaced the doors, okay? And I replaced 3 sliding glass, not sliding glass doors, but I replaced them with sliding glass doors. But, anybody could tell that, my abode was in a certain age group and it would need some improvement over time. And it might be able to affect my rates for electricity. And, there's so many things I could do, but you got to be smart and do something or say something that is relevant to me. And you got to keep it short. I would say your email should never be longer than 100 words.
I remember you wrote that in your book. I remember that very vividly.
I mean, short. And I think people can even go shorter today. I mean, I wrote that in the book and I think you just have to be relevant. I mean, all the way through, it's relevance. Does this matter? Does this matter? And the first time I started working with this, because I was doing a lot of experimentations. I was trying to rebuild my own business after an economic issue like we're facing today. And I'd lost a lot of clients. I had to come back and I was doing a ton of experimentation because I was getting no results. And it's so hard. There are so many words that I wanted to say, like exciting and, leading edge. And, I wanted to put in all these words to talk about how wonderful my services were. And I had to keep taking one out and another and another. It's like, I love these words. I love these words. And it's like, no, this is not a marketing email. This is an email from me, Jill, about them.
Yes.
And that matters.
That's huge what you said right there. And how I would answer that question, Joan, is 2 ways. One, anytime, and I learned this in copywriting, and you know this as a writer, anytime you see the word I, me, us, our, change it to you, your. Yep. It's about the customer. So you got to take out as many I's and me's as you see in your email because they don't care about you. They just don't. And the other is back to technology. There's video emails now. I've had a huge success now with Loom and with Vidyard and those type of video things where people open those emails because they're curious to see the video. And you can leave a little 30-second clip. Hey, Jill, this is Allan. I heard you. Your home was built in 1986, and you might need some new doors. Whatever you're going to do, you can put a picture in the background and the video email. So that would be my advice: is really look into doing some video emails because they get open at a much higher rate than a regular text.
I would say too, in terms of closing, what matters. I mean, I see so many people write their last sentence. I would love to meet with you to share something about it. I would love to meet with you. If you put the word love in your email, that is the worst thing you can do. That's all about, I would love to meet with you. It's like, no, what you should be saying is if this is of interest, let's talk.
Yes.
Something like that. Not, I would love to meet with you to share with you what we're doing at our company and how we can help you out. No, if this is of interest, but then you got to have something ahead of that closing that might be of interest.
Right. And it's about them. If this is of interest to you, it's not like I would want, like you said, you take the I out, you turn it to you. And it's a different email. It's a different feel. It's totally a different tenor. It's everything. Well, Jill, this has been unbelievably amazing. Again, I am very excited. I'm like, the guy who wants to run around and get your autograph on your book, but I've been a big fan of yours for years. Keep up the great work. I really appreciate you joining me today. And everyone, any parting words for anyone besides, it's about your customer?
Think better, not more, better.
That's it. Think better, not more. That was the great Jill Konrath, everyone. I am going to end it here. Again, remember, if you want to send in a question, go to marketingandsalespodcast.com. You can send in a question. If we read it, you will get a free copy of my book, autographed by me. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining me. Jill, thank you again for being on the podcast. And this has been Marketing and Sales over cocktails or over coffee today. And we will see everyone next time.